Hi, this is Dr. Conley. Welcome back. It seems like it's been a few weeks since you've been able to see me, and I've recorded on video. Want to talk with you today, chapter 6 about deviance. Now, I'm going to rewind, go back to chapter 2. What is a norm? A norm is an expected behavior based on values. And we talked about the three types: folkways, mores, and taboos. Now, deviance, to sum it up in a nutshell, refers to any violation of a norm. Now, Howard Becker, he's actually a former professor of mine in grad school, he says that when it comes to deviance, it's not the act, but the reaction to the act that determines whether something is deviant. Once again, it's not the act, but the reaction to the act that determines whether something is deviant. Perfect example. Pick one of your favorite artists, one of your favorite musicians, and let's go back to cassette. Everybody remember days when we used cassettes? Okay. Somebody had a cassette of a certain artist album, and you wanted a copy. You could go to any store, the pharmacy, pick up blank cassettes. So on one side in the cassette player, you'd hit play. The other side, you'd hit record. 45 minutes later, the whole original cassette has been recorded. Question: was there discussion about copyright? Probably not. People did it all the time, and you saw people on the street selling these cassettes or mixed cassettes, etc. Now, let's take CDs. Let's say I have one of your favorite artists, and you're like, Dr. Conley, can you burn me a copy of that? Okay, so plug it in the computer. I still don't know how to do this, but you plug it in the computer and somehow you hit burn, and then you put a blank CD in. I guess somebody email me and tell me how you do it. Well, no, don't tell me how you do it because it's violating a norm. Okay, so I do that, and let's say somebody else says burn a couple more copies. Now, does society see something wrong with that? Probably. Now let's take downloading off of the internet. What are they? The file sharing and the Napster. Don't laugh. I still have an iPod that's 2 years old, and I've yet to do any of this because I'm scared. But I know I do have an iTunes card that I can buy the songs. But the whole concept that when people were either sharing, and I know the students know a zillion websites to go to, but now I'm not sure if you are aware, but there are consequences for taking music and not paying for it off of the internet. Somebody, I forgot what the fine was. They copied 25 songs. This was in Hawaii last spring. They copied like 25 songs and were fined hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay, for copying because of violation of copyright. But you see, was not the cassette, burning the CD, and getting music off the internet, are they not the same thing? Taking an original piece of work and making a duplication of it with perhaps not paying more than whatever the cost of the CD or cassette. But when it was cassettes, there was not a big societal uproar about doing so. CDs, they make computers and the CDs where you're blocked from burning, and then the whole thing with the Napster and the other LimeWire, those sites which, then created what's now becoming some severe consequences for using those copies. So once again, that's my example of Howard Becker's theory about deviance. It's not the act, but the reaction to the act that determines whether something's deviant. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to remember about deviance is that it varies based on our cultures and assumptions. It's relative. What's deviant in one culture may not be deviant in another culture, and vice versa. It depends on a group's norm. That's when we go through the what is considered a subculture, what is considered a counterculture. It just really depends on society. For instance, any of us who perhaps eat beef, in certain cultures where the cow is sacred, that would be considered a taboo, a severe violation. Okay, so once again, It's just a matter of whatever the cultural norms are for that particular society. Okay. Crime. Crime is violation of a law, and a law is a written norm. Remember, when you put the norm in writing and it becomes a law, um, crime is the violation of that written rule, written law. Uh, this is also relative. Crime is relative. For instance, how many of you would say that Donald Trump is a successful businessman? Makes big deals, international billionaire. Um, One of the early versions of our text uses the example that Donald Trump, while he makes a huge profit in the United States and is considered admirable, in China it's called profiteering, okay? And it's a crime that's punishable by hanging, okay? Just business deals and the wheeling and dealing, so to speak, okay? Deviance can be associated with three things, the three A's: ability, appearance, and association. Ability. If somebody has a physical or mental disability, blindness, okay, abilities. And think about, hopefully it does not apply to you, but think about when people are around others who are differently abled. I don't like to use the word disability because one doesn't have one particular ability, a person may have additional abilities that some others don't have. Just like even with our five senses, they say a lot of times people who, let's say they can't hear, they may have a greater sight. People who can't see may have greater hearing. I know someone who lost their sense of smell, and I need to talk to them to find out, perhaps have their other senses really kind of increased. So people who are differently able, think about how the general public responds when they are around others that are differently able. It doesn't make it right, but in the sociological context of deviance, ability is definitely one of the categories. Appearance. Some of the master status, somebody with a facial birthmark, if they walked in the room, or even if I had, let's say, a facial birthmark, like I know someone who has a birthmark over their eye. This whole time you're watching this video, you probably just see that and think, wow, that's different. Okay. Obesity could be another form of deviance through appearance. And the last one, association. Let's say you have a brother who's a criminal. Let's say someone as a victim of AIDS, just by association. Now, fortunately, with education, stigma around HIV/AIDS is definitely changing in society, and that's a good thing with the education. So once again, deviance can be associated with ability, appearance, and associations. Just lastly, consequences. Norms create social order. A group's social arrangements create the expected behaviors. Where imagine if you're in the presence of somebody who's violating a norm, not doing things the way they quote unquote normally should be. That creates kind of a tension. And we talked about different consequences. Some, mildly important, just kind of dirty looks or just gestures of annoyance, all the way up to punishment by incarceration. Also, think about even when you're a little shaming. Shaming is an effective negative sanction within our groups and small communities where there's public ridicule, sometimes even condemnation if somebody violates a norm. Okay. All right. Different perspectives on why people violate norms. There are three. Biological says that people are genetically predisposed. Yes, there are researchers out there that have studied biology and genetics and determined that things such as low intelligence might contribute to crime. An extra Y chromosome in males leads to crime. They talk about body type, muscular and squarish bodies are more likely to commit street crimes. I don't know if you necessarily buy into it, or even if I buy into it, but a biological definition would say there's some genetic predisposition to committing crime. Psychological would say there are abnormalities within the individual, personality disorders resulting from childhood trauma, or other subconscious motivations could be an explanation of crime from a psychological perspective. Sociological perspective looks for factors outside of the individual. What are some of the social influences that people use, external influences that perhaps can lead toward people committing crimes? All right, that's kind of the introduction to deviance. Now I'm going to have 3 separate videos, small videos, on the 3 different sociological perspectives and how that relates to crime. All right, I will see you again soon.